Good evening, hello, afternoon. Let's talk about relationships. That's today's topic. Relationships coming up for a lot of people. I know for myself, relationships are challenging. And we're here to learn and grow through every relationship that we encounter. Because how we relate to ourselves is reflected in how we relate to another. Let's see, already in February, this is the month about relationships, which everybody's like, ooh, it's Valentine's Day month. And some of us are like, oh, it's Valentine's Day month, and I don't know about anybody else. But it can be quite the, when you're not in a relationship. How many out there can relate to February sucks? Let's talk relationships. I essentially decided I've been wanting to do this video. I've been wanting to do a lot of videos lately, but specifically about relationships because, like I started out, how you relate to yourself is how do you relate to others. And life is about relationship. Because everybody who shows up to you, whether intimate, whether it's encounters out in public, or just, family, friends, that's all teaching you about you. They're there to help you grow, and you're there to help them grow. And relationships, how we learn about ourselves, whether we set healthy boundaries, if we prioritize our needs or others first. How many of you out there put other people's needs in front of your own, and so therefore you're the last person to get their cup filled? We all need to have a full cup in order to extend anything extra. If your cup runneth over, then you got plenty to give. That's where you should be. But if you're feeling depleted and you're down to the last dregs of your cup, then you need to go within and take time, make time for yourself. Because if you don't have enough compassion and care for yourself, it makes it very difficult to extend that to other people. Right now, being Valentine's Day month, it's all about, you're supposed to be in a partnership, and the whole commercialization of you need to be with somebody to be somebody. How many of you can relate to that? That if you're not with somebody, then you're nobody? That doesn't make sense now, does it? Relationships are difficult because it stirs up things in us. Some things we don't want to be confronted with. And a relationship with another person is going to bring that stuff to surface. It's everything from, that person doesn't treat me the way I need to be or want to be treated. Well, how do you treat yourself? And are you putting up with something that is less than what you are worthy of because you don't feel worthy? That in itself is a huge ooh, I got to sit with that. Most of us, and I'm speaking from myself included here, that if someone's not treating me the way I deserve, the way, happiness is our birthright. So to treat another person less than kind, less than loving, anything less, number one, isn't giving your best. Number two, it's showing a reflection of how you treat yourself. So yes, of course, if someone's showing up to you and treating you like crap, imagine how they're treating themselves within. And that's the environment they are familiar with. And the way that we show up to in a relationship, oh, it's so familiar, felt like we knew each other for years. A lot of times, that's because it's just like home. How many of you grew up in a really happy home? And so the relationships we have growing up will sometimes dictate the kinds of relationships that we not only draw into ourselves, but we're willing to accept. And what feels unfamiliar we'll reject. How many of you out there realize, looking back at relationships, that, oh my gosh, that person treated me like gold? What was I thinking to get, to reject them or go elsewhere? Because that's what we do. We go in and out of contrasts, polarities, good, bad. We have to see extremes to really understand what it is that aligns, what it is that feels right, what it is we deserve. And if your relationships are less than savory, they really require some, like you're dealing with fights all the time and resentment and frustration. You need to take a step back and ask yourself, is it worth it? Because if your energy is being depleted in a relationship, then you're out of alignment of your soul, not in alignment. To fight is basically not love. So fighting is really out of fear. Take that into perspective. If you're fighting for anything, using the words I'm fighting or I'm a warrior and all these different things, to me takes a lot of self-reflection. Why do you think it has to be a fight? Who said we had to fight? Now there's compromise, there is working together. There's finding connection, areas where you can grow. If relationships aren't growing together with one another, one person's going this direction, the other one's going the opposite direction, those are the times when you got to sit down and go, maybe we need to rethink this. Maybe we need to move on. Maybe we're not meant for one another. And I can tell you from what I've been seeing in the group, from what I've been seeing around me, a lot of relationships are being challenged right now. It's either you're learning about the resilience of your relationship or you're really just being faced with your shit and going, wow, I can't put up with this anymore. I deserve better. I know better. One great example, when you're working on yourself and your partner isn't working on themselves, and then they're trying to cut you down because they feel, believe it or not, what happens is if you're somebody doing really hard work, trying to better yourself, and your partner is cutting you down or your partner's not doing the work on their end, but they're trying to make you feel bad for every little thing that you do, that's out of fear. First off, you can have compassion in recognizing that, because if you're working on yourself, you can even see that in other people around you. Or it doesn't even have to be a partner. It could be your friends or your family. And they're pointing fingers at you because, well, you're just selfish because you're not thinking about them. You're thinking about yourself. But if you don't think about yourself first, how can you think of other people? Being selfish is a selfless service too. So if somebody's cutting you down, you have to sit with that and go, ooh, wait a minute here. What's really going on? Chances are, there's a couple ways you can look at it. If they're willing to work with you, if they're willing to sit down and have an adult, compassionate, receptive conversation, that's a good sign, that's a good step. Because sometimes you got to approach and have those uncomfortable conversations. And other times it's like, ooh, that person just is unwilling to even go there. And you have to know. And I'm not saying everybody has to throw in the towel. You have to know what you are willing to tolerate, work through, support, enable. Because a lot of these things are really enabling. If the other person is not willing to work with you and they're constantly poking at you, but unwilling to be poked because, God forbid, they are being seen for what it is they know in themselves they're not working on. So a lot of times if you're the one doing the work, the other partner who's not doing the work is trying to cut you down because, number one, they're feeling threatened because you're moving forward. They're being stuck. They feel they're being left behind. Nobody wants to be left behind. Now, there's compassion you can have in that. But that doesn't mean you got to stick it out if they're unwilling to do something to better themselves. And I'm speaking to those of you out there, and especially in relationships that are mentally, emotionally, physically, any form of abuse. There is a certain point when you wake up one morning and you go, how did I get in this situation? And I would like to hope that many of you out there are not waiting years. I've seen some posts that people said they were 30 plus years into relationships that were totally unhealthy and very toxic. But only you know what you're going through. Often we will tolerate and enable those kinds of relationship out of fear of abandonment, fear of loneliness, fear of rejection, because we wouldn't want that done to ourselves. We don't want to do that to our partner. So it's like this push-pull, and it's a codependency because it's familiar. It's something you must have grown up with at some point in your life in order for you to tolerate or even be in it. Often we're taking on the stories of our parents, our families. We're carrying forward legacies. Until you're able to recognize those unhealthy patterns in the past, you most likely won't even see how you have recreated and are reliving it. The stories we tell ourselves are the stories we're living, not just talking about the past. When we tell stories about our past, we're recreating it, we're reliving it. It is energy. And relationship is meant for growth. It is not always going to be, oh, I'm supposed to be with this person for the rest of my life. Unfortunately, change. It is inevitable and it's in constant happening. So if you can recognize it, there are relationships for a season. They come in for a reason. And that they're there for you to grow. And sometimes they go past their point of where you've gotten the information, the knowledge, the awareness, and the lesson. Sometimes those lessons, those gifts are without a bow. But again, that's how they help you grow. When you are in a relationship with another person, they are constantly reflecting back to you where it is you need to do your work. If they're not treating you the way you feel you need to be treated, then start looking at how you're treating yourself. If you are tolerating behavior from someone that is unhealthy and toxic, ask yourself why. Why don't you feel worthy? Why don't you feel deserving of true, unbelievable, yummy, just affectionate love? I saw a post in our group today that I was reading over and I could totally relate. It was a relationship issue where she knew the guy is not... She was basically putting a distance between her and the person. I don't care if he's cheating. I don't care what he does. I'm not really in the greatest situation, but I'm actually happy. But that's also the story, right? You can create a barrier, a wall, to where you're just in a comfortable routine and habit, as opposed to really allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to be courageous enough to let another person see you and love you as you are, that you're playing a character in a relationship just for the codependency of having someone there. Well, I'm getting my needs met. Well, what are your true needs? Are you really fully engaged? Are you feeling into everything, or are you numbed out and you're just using that as, I have what looks like a relationship? I've been there. In the past, I was really good at long distance relationships because they weren't with me all the time. They would go back to wherever they were, and we would travel and we'd have these beautiful experiences. Doesn't that sound wonderful? Because then I don't get to see them every single day. And I get my space and they get their space. But in my heart and soul, I craved the closeness, the more routine, the more affection, the cuddling up with someone at night in bed. Am I the only one who's like that? I'm a hopeless romantic, to be totally honest with you. But yes, I have had my fears about getting too close to somebody. And what is that really about? How can you get so close to somebody that you lose yourself? You don't ever lose yourself. You may deny yourself, but the truth is if you are in awareness of who you are and you feel confident in who you are, it doesn't even matter who's in your life. It wouldn't matter if they weren't in your life. And to think that you can go through this life, oh, I'm happy being single. I'm here to tell you, even I know better than that. Yeah, easy, but that's the hard part, because you're not going to see your stuff until you're in a relationship. Because in relationship, it's like, oh man, I thought I learned that lesson. You got to learn how to communicate better with other people and truly notice where, what you need and what they need, and this whole balancing of, masculine and feminines. Doesn't matter if you're in same-sex relationships. It doesn't matter what kind of relationship you're in. What is the energy you come into the relationship with? What is the energy you need and expect? Because then the expectations also throw in a whole nother wrench. Now, I could totally do a series on relationships. Am I in one right now? No. But I can tell you what I've learned from them. And I can tell you that I have some of the most beautiful, most amazing relationships with people. Not necessarily intimate relationships, but they reflect back to me things about myself that remind me of my growth and where I'm at along my path. I'm not perfect, but I'm perfectly me. And I know there's someone out there, and I'm not even worried about when that's going to happen. I think it's completely healthy, and this is for all the ladies and gentlemen too. I'm going to say for myself, one of my old patterns that I had to sit with was how easily I could fall into a relationship with somebody instead of really just getting to know them and learning about the other person and allowing them to get to know me. Instead, we get enmeshed and we lose sight, and it's like you can't even see, it's blurred lines. It's like, for me, it's been a Jedi mind trick, I'll be honest. I used to go out and think, I want to date a couple guys, not because I wanted to, it wasn't even about sex. It was really just getting to know other people and different personalities and what really, what does this person offer and what does that person offer? I don't see anything wrong with dating. In fact, I think dating is a necessity. We shouldn't just go on a date and the next thing we know, instant Jedi mind trick, I've been pulled into a relationship. That has been what has happened to me. I don't know what it is about me, but men just go, ugh, she's mine. And they become, in the past, I've had very controlling relationships. I've had very possessive relationships. I've actually had some healthy relationships too. And the beauty is because of all the contrast and the different types of relationships, I know what worked and what didn't work. What was healthy and what was unhealthy. What was toxic, especially. And I'm grateful for all of it. I wouldn't change a thing. I've been around drug addicts in my past. I had one boyfriend, he had a serious drug addiction and alcoholism. I had another boyfriend who didn't do drugs, but had an issue with alcoholism. And I've had some really beautiful, loving relationships too. And they loved me so much. But funny enough, the timing in my mind was I wanted to go out and explore the world. I wanted to do other things. And I used to think, and I'll share this, I used to think back when I broke up with my high school sweetheart, I had in my heart, well, one day hopefully we'll get back together. And I own that. And I have no expectations or holds on anything from the past anymore. In fact, I think it's very important to move forward in life. Unless there's undoubtedly a reason why you need to be with somebody from the past, I think it's very important to work on yourself and your healing. If you need to be with somebody from the past, but don't be going back to it just because it's familiar either. Because the familiar is often, as I touched upon, it's just because it's like home. And if you didn't grow up in a healthy home environment, you don't necessarily want to sit with the comfort of that home in a new relationship. Oh, it felt like we've known each other for years. We're so in sync with each other. That could be such a deception in saying that and even believing it. Give yourself a minimum. Everybody knows the honeymoon period is about 3 months. Don't do anything until you've been with the person at least 3 months. Get to know one another. Take your time. If you're going to put your cards out on the table, you're going to, throw it all out there. Just be aware that sometimes too much can be more than enough. It can be overwhelming. But also not giving enough information too, and withholding stuff can also be just as deceiving. You have to know, if you're vomiting all your stuff on somebody, they may be running out in the opposite direction. You have to have a healthy balance in a relationship, and it's all about how you're going to show up to it. If you completely projectile vomit all of your stuff, your trauma, your issues, and I've done that. I did that in my past. And I had people say, guys that I dated, don't you have another friend you could talk to about that stuff? And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, if I can't talk to my partner about this, how can I talk to anybody else like to me, and this is the type of relationship I want. I want a partner I can share anything with and not fear that they're going to judge me or reject me for even sharing it. So you got to feel people out. You've got to trust yourself first. What it is you're willing to accept in another person. What are what are some of the special qualities that you seek? What is this special type of reciprocity that you require, that you need in a relationship? Are you codependent? That's important to know too, because I think it's very easy for people to fall into the trap of, well, I really like to be in relationships. Why? Why do you like to be in relationships? Is it an easy way of getting away from yourself? You don't want to be alone. You're fearful of being alone with yourself. Loneliness in itself should not be your reason for getting in relationships. Relationships are there, again, they're to enrich your lives. And if you get in any type of relationship, and maybe just a friendship, we got plenty of friends out there, plenty of people. Go to a community where people have similar interests and you can relate to them on the same level. And first find a community to support you. Because I'd say for me, the most important thing in my life is the girlfriends I have in my goddess group and my community, the yoga village. And I've cultivated that for many, many years. And I have people from my past. I have people that I know I can pick up the phone and talk to, like I spoke to him just the other day, and it's been years, and vice versa. They know they can call me. But this time right now, one of the things that I'm most compassionate about, not just for myself, but for other people too, is I'm seeing a lot of people in pain. Because it's like they feel like they just woke up to their partner and the truth of the situation that they're in, and like they didn't even realize they'd gotten themselves so deep into an unhealthy situation. And I have so much compassion, so much heart. You're in my prayers, each and every one of you, because it takes a lot of courage to get out of those situations. Sometimes you have to call in reinforcements. You need friends. Not only just to support you and hear you out and to be there for you. Maybe you need to move out. Maybe you need to ask the other person to leave. Sometimes you need a witness. Maybe even it's gotten as bad as you need to call in the cops. But whatever it is, know that that's number one reason why we created this group. We're here to support you in any way you need it. We are here to offer advice if you want it, or even just to listen or to read what you have going on in your life. One thing I've also learned, not everybody wants people's advice, but when they ask for it, it opens them up to a multitude of possibilities. Because in our lives, we have so many choices. We're not limited. We're quite unlimited. There's so much available to us. We have miracles constantly happening around us. We have magic within us. We are magic. We are miracles. So when you need someone to hear you out for the support, you need to be uplifted, you need inspiration, you need to feel stronger and empowered, that's what the group is for. But we're also here to witness you and hold you, even without giving you or offering any form of advice. I know a lot of people just need to be heard. They just want someone to listen. Because the majority of what we speak is for us to hear. And sometimes when we speak, we hear our answers in our own words. We reflect upon what we're going through, and then we're able to take that and find the wisdom and the truth in our own words. When my mother and I would speak, she was my sounding board. And while I would be on the phone, although I know she always wanted to offer some form of advice, I would inevitably hear my own answers in my voice. I've known this for years. Just hearing my own voice and my words. As I spoke it out, I was finding my solution. Each one of us is capable of doing that. We have all the answers within us. Sometimes we just need someone to listen so we can hear ourselves. So there's just one area of relationship is just the one we have with ourselves, and sometimes bouncing off of another. But again, there is a lot of turmoil, like, people uncomfortable in relationship because they're realizing something in their heart and soul is not being fulfilled, and they know they deserve better. If you're unhappy wherever you're at, that's your soul speaking to you to say, hello, it isn't working anymore. And you can only go through it for so much longer before you just say, done with it. But please don't wait years. And you know what? A little communication goes a long way. Sometimes it's the fear of just saying something because you're afraid you're going to be rejected just by saying it. Try to get through that fear. Step into the courage. Be vulnerable. Because guess what? Even if you get rejected, at least you know where you stand. I would rather find out that somebody doesn't support me and doesn't love me than to turn around and live with all of that not knowing. At least then I have the choice to move forward and find what does serve me, love me, and support me. It's scary stuff, but at least when you speak up, you know where you stand. And if the other person is reactionary, non-confrontational, you've also got your answer there too. Because if they don't want to give you an answer, it's because they can sense you're not happy and you are trying to make a choice. And they don't want you to depend on them for the choice. But yet they don't want to lose control and they don't want to lose the situation they've got. Confrontation, aggravation, frustration, any form of an uprising in another person who is reacting to what you're simply requesting of, where do we stand? I'd like to know and understand our relationship better. If they come back in an attacking manner, I would personally start thinking about moving on. Because that person, number one, feels like they're being rejected. That is a possibility. And number two, they are comfortable where they're at and they don't want to have to change. So the fear of change will cause this uprising and that person will just get upset. And you know what? Guess what? It's okay. They're human. So you can't get upset at them for showing their true emotions and what they're feeling. But you have to decide for yourself what it is you're willing to tolerate. And open lines of communication are just so simple and people make them so difficult. They turn them into arguments that are totally unnecessary. You need to be willing to go through the difficult conversations to grow. If you're unwilling to have a difficult conversation, your growth is going to be stunted. You're just being enabled to stay small and you can't carry that forward. You're just stuck. Love is all about going through the metamorphosis. You know, the butterfly, it starts out as a caterpillar and it's in its cocoon, but it loves itself so much, it doesn't even know what's coming. It is going to change. It is feeling the change. All of us feel the change. You can't not feel the change. How can you not feel the change when it is staring you right in the face? So anytime you confront somebody, just know, be prepared. Your confrontation of a question may seem so innocent to you. It's also putting them on the spot to step into their truth. And sometimes that's scary for the other side, the other party. And I have so much compassion for both sides because I know from both sides, number one, the ego doesn't like to be rejected. So of course, the last thing anybody wants is to be told I'm leaving you or that this isn't working out and I'm moving on. The ego steps up and goes, how dare you? I'm supposed to be the one to do that. I'm supposed to be the one in charge here. I was in control. What happened? You switched the table on me. I don't like that. On the other side of that, the ego can also be happy to be in control and say, I'm the one leaving. So having been the type of person that I was in my past, it was easier for me to just say, you know what, this isn't working out. I'm moving on. Boy, my ego did not like being broken up with. And that only happened maybe 1 or 2 times. But the times that I broke up with other people was all about my own discomfort, or, like when things just didn't feel right, I was ready to move forward. It was easier for me to move on, but I didn't do well with people leaving me. And I've created and found a happy medium and a healthy boundary in that for myself, and recognizing that instead of working through some things in my past, I would run. And in other cases, I've also seen where I stuck around too long and should have been done with it much sooner. And I knew it was over long before it was, or before one of us made a move. See, we always know in our hearts when a relationship is truly over, but we don't always call it quits when we need to, when we should. And that really just hurts both of you. When a relationship is over and you have two mature adults, hopefully, not always, you should be able to amicably separate and still have that love for one another. To not be nitpicking and pointing fingers and whose fault it was, because to be totally honest with you, there's nothing to do with fault. The relationships ensue because both parties were in it for something. Both parties had an agenda. They wanted certain needs met, and clearly they were met. Whether it was an unhealthy, codependent, somebody's got to be there in my life, versus somebody taking care of me, narcissistic, controlling, and trying to keep the other person in line. It doesn't even matter. You can put so many labels on relationships and the dynamics. But the true reality is what is it that makes your heart happy? Are you able to be with somebody and be in your joy, in your truth, in your knowing, and not compromise your integrity or yourself so that the other person feels comfortable? You should never have to give up who you are or walk on eggshells in a relationship. And if you are, then you need to get out of that relationship. And nobody should have to do that around you either. Relationships just require a whole lot of fine-tuning and looking at and reflection. And the best relationships are the ones that can have honest conversations no matter how difficult they are. Because the more difficult the conversation that you're willing to have with another person, the deeper the bond, stronger that heart connection. And those are resilient relationships. Those are power couples. They work through their problems and they become more powerful and stronger. And people see it. You can feel the vibration and the energy of a power couple. Two people who are magnanimous when they run into a room and you're like, wow, look at them. They shine. They radiate. You can feel them in the room. Every one of us deserves that, and every one of us is capable of it. But sometimes you got to do the hard work by yourself, look at your own stuff before you can integrate it and apply it in another relationship with someone else. And if you have any more questions, please leave me some comments. Let me know how you're doing. I know there's a lot of struggling people out there, and I am holding you in my heart and my prayers, because these are challenging times. And this is Valentine's Day month. This is the month where everything is relationships. Oh, you should be in a couplehood. If you're not with somebody, you're nobody. It's such a marketing, and it pulls on people's heartstrings, and it makes us feel less than. But you are worthy. You deserve love, and you deserve the best. So never settle. Be willing to speak up for you, and there are kind ways to do that, by the way. Do something good for yourself, whatever that is. Nourish your soul. Do whatever it is that makes you feel whole. I love you very much. Have a great evening, and I will catch up with you later. Mwah.